What we have here is a little Greek terracotta head of a young man from the classical period. It is made from a very fine, bright, beige clay, which gives it an almost marble-like appearance. And this clay is very typical for the terracotta production of Taranto in southern Italy, where this piece was made. The young beardless man is wearing a broad tania under which many short locks appear. This hair is a typical classical style of that period, always with an elaborate system of so-called sickles and forks. A system developed by famous artists like Polykleitos. On top of the broad hairband here is a thick, round, dotted wreath, and this wreath was adorned additionally with large blossoms, of which only a rest here above the ear is preserved. The backside has never been worked out, but it's still interesting looking at it, as we find a little collector's tag here with the number 22. Very often we do not know who this person was who attached these labels, but in this case, luckily, we know. The piece comes from the collection of Tom Wirzi, who was born in 1881. In his young years, he was assistant to Jakob Hirsch in Munich. He is well known to numismatists because, still as a young man, he built up a huge collection of more than 2,200 specimens of bronze coins of Sicily and Magna Grecia. Already in 1907, the first part of his collection was sold as Jakob Hirsch auction. A second part was offered decades later in 1973 at Loy in Zurich, shortly before Wirzi passed away in 1974. At that time he was living in New York, where he kept also his collection of South Italian terracottas, which was tremendous as well. Ernst Berger, the later director of the Archaeological Museum of Basel, counted more than 800 terracotta pieces at a visit in New York when Wirzi was trying to sell this collection to the Basel Museum. This deal was never made, as the museum wanted to select about 100 pieces and Wirzi wanted to sell his collection only as a whole. After Wirzi's death, his inheritance was dispersed. The Basel Museum then took the chance to buy 100 desired pieces, and the rest was offered on the market, where Wirzi's pieces appear here and there sporadically. But back to our piece. It belongs to a large group of terracotta statuettes that is very typical for Taranto and goes from the archaic period down to the end of the classical period in the late 4th century BC. There are both young beardless and elderly bearded men, sometimes alone and sometimes as couples, and usually they are lying on a cliné. Some are armed, but mostly they wear this enormous festive ornate with bands, wreaths, and blossoms. They are definitely depicted as participants of some kind of feast. Many think that this feast is taking place in the afterworld, and the terracottas show us the deceased Tarentine gentry. This would explain the severe and earnest expression all of them have. At our piece, which is exceptionally detailed, we even find a little line of worry at the forehead on the otherwise calm and idealized face. Nevertheless, as far as we know, these figures do not come from graves, and so there is no evidence for a sepulchral context. Tentatively, they are connected to a local heroic cult, but we know too little about that cult to explain these figures in that context. To make it even more complicated, some of these figures are not lying on the typical symposium furniture, but on animals or on mythological creatures like tritons, ketoi, and even on centaurs. This at least makes clear that these symposiasts are not part of the normal human sphere, but are in another unreal world. This might be in accordance with the theory of the heroic cult, as we know that at least some of these heroes did not have to go to the Hades, the sad underworld, but were transferred to the Elysium, where they could have a happy afterlife. It remains a mystery what the precise context and meaning of these figures was. Nevertheless, they give us an idea that there are still so many things we do not understand, and we are thrown back to admire the enormous artistic quality of these terracotta sculptures, and maybe it makes them even more interesting that we don't know what they were made for. You can buy this piece in our auction of 22nd of July under number 64.